Hello, everyone. I'm Amy Mahali. Welcome to Be Well Clinic's channel. It's our first YouTube live stream, and we are so excited to have you here with us. I'm going to just say a little bit about Be Well Clinic and our education and things like that, why we get people on and get them start showing up here. So we're very excited. Today we are going to be discussing autoimmunity. It's part of our how-to series, but the first one that we're doing on YouTube Live, but how to heal autoimmunity. And we're also going to discuss PMGs. So you'll find out what those are when we are done today. So I'm so excited to have you here. So I'm Amy Mahali. I am a family nurse practitioner and a certified GAPS practitioner. And some of you may be familiar with this book that Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride has written about leaky gut, how to heal a leaky gut. So that is something I'm certified in and I help people with, but I love teaching. So I'm very excited for this opportunity to be present here with people as we are working through learning how to heal our body and learning what is good for us. So we are going to get started here in just a few minutes. I love teaching. So teaching is something that I do a lot of, and teaching is something that I have a passion for, and I'm so excited to be able to teach in person, but also it's great to be able to teach here on live platforms like this. So hopefully this is something that works well. Also, this is my puppy, Padfoot, and you will see him, I'm sure, during this video. So we are just going to have him, but he's quiet and sweet and adorable. So that will be great. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Go ahead and put comments in below as we are streaming live. It's a great place to do that. And otherwise, I have a lot to talk about. So let's get started. So autoimmunity, that is something that's so prevalent. And as you may have seen in the class description, autoimmunity is probably underreported. Why is that? Because we only have certain tests in the scientific community that help with autoimmunity. Only certain ones that show Hashimoto's thyroid, for example, or show celiac disease, for example. So when there's a specific known antibody that we can test for, we can diagnose that as an autoimmune disease. However, autoimmune diseases happen much more frequently than that. I will link in the description a video that we're going to talk about a little bit later, and how science is showing, and they're starting to make connections, that a ongoing inflammatory cycle of a certain tissue is actually causing issues that actually can bring about an autoimmune condition, and it may be subclinical. So we may not have antibodies to test for it, but it also may be something that is so minor. It's just an underlying thread, just that underlying current, as opposed to a obvious diagnosis. So that's what we're going to get into, and I'm really excited. So looking at the next thing that I wanted to go to here on my notes, how does autoimmunity happen? When I first heard about autoimmunity, I'll be honest, I was a little suspicious about what it seemed suspicious that the body would attack itself, right? And I learned about autoimmunity 18 years ago in nursing school, so it was a long time ago. You know, there's a lot more research and study. It's more common now. It was not a very common ailment, at least a known common ailment back then. So I heard it, and it was weird to me that the immune system would attack itself. So then I learned what Western medicine teaches, which is the immune system gets broken and it attacks itself. And that was also weird to me. I wasn't quite sure how the immune system could be that broken to attack itself, but it made a lot of sense what I was taught. And so that was the impression that I kept for a long time. Then I read Dr. Natasha's work and started really studying from that perspective. And that really rang much more true to me. So I want to share that difference. You are probably decently familiar with autoimmune disease and that it is the body attacking itself, right? How does that come to be? So here is a situation. When damage happens to a tissue, then that tissue can get into the bloodstream. When there are proteins in the bloodstream, the immune system views that as an emergent response. Proteins in the bloodstream should be bound with a transport molecule. There should be an escort from one place to the other. Otherwise, the body looks on that as potential trouble. So bacteria are proteins. A cell from the liver could go up into your kidney and start growing and reproducing, which we would call a tumor. So we really don't want to have proteins willy-nilly in the bloodstream. So the body correctly responds to proteins in the bloodstream with attack. And if those proteins keep coming, what happens is the body will create an antibody to that thing. Now, interesting. This happens with any protein, which includes food proteins and pollen proteins and pet dander proteins. So anything that gets into the bloodstream in whatever way, that is going to cause a immune response, a proper immune response, because the protein can't be there. So if the protein is there, the immune system responds. If that is, let's sidebar a little bit, if that is from a pollen, for example, like my slight allergies at the moment right now, if that comes from a pollen, then what happens? That is going to come into the bloodstream in some way. Ooh, we better talk about this first. Why is it in the bloodstream? Don't we have barriers in our body for this? Of course we do. First barrier, we learned this first thing in science health class, right? Your skin. Skin is a barrier, biggest organ of the body. Well, when we have skin that is a barrier to the rest of us, that works well. Great. What about breathing? What about eating? Those are also places that need barrier lining. The barrier lining of our mucous membranes is made up of epithelial cells, which are the same type of cells of our skin. That is barrier lining cells, epithelial cells. So epithelial cells of the skin, epithelial cells of the mucous membrane, and lining. Also of the gut, the intestinal tract. That's also an epithelial cell. We call those enterocytes, is one of the names for them. But they are epithelial cells. They're skin cells in essence, or they're barrier cells. When we have barrier cells anywhere and things get through the barrier, something happened, right? And this is what we call leaky gut. It also can be where you have a reactive airway and things like that. And sometimes through the skin, right? If you get a damage, not just a cut, but let's say you have a rash on your skin and those skin cells get torn apart a little bit, that will potentially let bacteria come in, right? So we can get a fungal rash on top of an abrasion or a bacterial infection when we have an abrasion that didn't heal well. So we always have to take care of our skin by putting Band-Aids on and other care if we have an entry point. Our body is designed to not have entry points. Our body is designed for all of our cells, our barrier cells, to be very tightly junctioned. I can't quite do it with my fingers. Very tightly junctioned. And those tight junctions keep everything out. And then the cells that line are smart. And the ones in our gut in particular, and our mucous membranes, but our gut, because they absorb food, have the microvilli that will bring in the substances that we think we should have. It analyzes those inside the cell and then allows it into the bloodstream. It does not allow whole proteins into the bloodstream, in case you were wondering. So things get into the bloodstream only when allowed, when we have healthy barriers everywhere. So we should be a closed system with only permission and access granted by permission. So when doesn't that happen? It doesn't happen when we have leaky gut, and it doesn't happen when we have scurvy. Scurvy, what is scurvy? So scurvy is a vitamin C deficiency. Are we living in olden days? No. Do we still have scurvy? Yes, and here's why. We again have often subclinical scurvy, a vitamin C deficiency. Let me list off some of the common symptoms of scurvy. We have bleeding gums. I was going to say why, but I'll do the actual symptoms first. So bleeding gums, frequent bloody noses, propensity to aneurysm. We have just blanked on him. Propensity to aneurysm. We have a Well, allergies can be on there because we're going to have issues with, I'll tell you why, because that's jumping ahead a little bit. So bleeding, bruising, moving gums, bleeding gums, those are the main things. Inflammation, disc problems. There's vitamin C in many, many places. So the structure of all these membrane or connective tissue requires a lot of vitamin C. So when we have a vitamin C deficiency or scurvy, then we are going to have connective tissue issues. So there is connective tissue autoimmune disease. That is kind of a category. There are things like psoriasis, which is a connective tissue autoimmune disease. We also have things like pink toothbrush, which is bleeding gums. Your teeth may move. Your gums are receding. You have a propensity to aneurysms, which is bleeding, right? Varicose veins can be a vitamin C deficiency. Having your endocrine system out of balance can show some vitamin C deficiency, as can chronic lung issues, because your lungs need a lot of vitamin C to be well. So we have all of these different things. Most people, they have some fatigue, they have easy bruising, they maybe have pink gums, and they probably have an allergy. That's because there's not enough vitamin C to keep these junctions tight, along with other things that need to keep the junctions tight. So how do we get to where we're at? So leaky gut happens because, in large part, a scurvy, a vitamin C deficiency, and then often also a microbiome problem. So your microbiome is not good bacteria that are helpful, and viruses and good guys that are helping you, but they are pathogenic or opportunistic, which means they are going to take advantage of the situation and do what they want to do, what's helpful for them, as opposed to what is good for your body. These are things like candida overgrowth. Some candida is good, too many is bad. Pathogenic E. coli strains as opposed to beneficial E. coli strains. So there's a lot of ways our microbiome can get off course. And when that happens and it gets off course, then we have, when it gets off course, sorry, it's very hard to talk to a non-existent person. Hello, 4 people on here. I appreciate you're here. It gets off course. And when it does, it stops doing its jobs. The main jobs that a microbiome do are to keep the lining of your gut wall intact, in conjunction with needing to put vitamin C in the lining, right, as the glue, if you will. But the job is to keep the epithelial cells healthy. That's true on your skin. It's true in your mucous membranes, including your sinuses. Chronic sinus issue is a pretty common thing with permeable gut or skin or epithelial membranes. And then in our gut, that is the most talked about, right? So when we have a microbiome that's off, we have a gut barrier that becomes leaky. Things get into that leaky gut. So what things get in? Anything can get in, right? If it is a sieve without an intelligent cell analyzing what's coming in, anything can come in. And that is going to cause problems. On a whole nother talk, which is much more a GAPS talk, and I do have a YouTube video uploaded where I discussed quite a bit about GAPS, or gut and psychology syndrome, leaky gut protocol. So I'm going to not jump into that world very much unless there are specific questions about it, of course. So we have a leaky gut, which needs its own repair. But that leaky gut, we're just going to go from there. So leaky gut, things get through. What are those things? They could be proteins. Proteins could get into the body, and the body could develop a specific reaction to that protein. It keeps coming, the chicken or gluten or whatever. It keeps coming, and so the body says, this is a bad guy. I've got to watch out for it. Let me get a humoral immunity, meaning memory, immunity response to attack that specific protein when it shows up. That seems pretty smart. So that happens with proteins. Now we have allergies. Then something could come in that's a toxin. That toxin will go somewhere. Certain toxins go certain places. So heavy metals, for example, tend to like nerve and brain tissue the most. So they will be in your lungs, they will be in your lymph node, they will be in your nerves, they'll be in your brain, and they're going to cause issues. They're going to cause inflammation because the immune system finds out, oh, this toxin is sitting here damaging the cell. The body brings inflammation in to clean it up and get that toxin removed, but that causes swelling. Your pantry has to get a mess before you can put it back organized, right? So the body's way of cleaning up is always a little bit more inflammatory, big, right, before you can then close it up and get back. So we have a cell that's getting damaged. Now we have inflammation. Now, what happens if that cell becomes damaged so much that it starts leaking its own cell protein content out? That definitely happens. And this is why, with pretty secure certainty, I echo many people who say there is no way to get an autoimmune disease without first having leaky gut. Because why would the body be so damaged that the cell itself was leaking contents into the body? Now, I think there are a few ways in that that's not true. A concussion, for example, that will leak brain tissue into the body, potentially. The blood-brain barrier can get damaged by that concussion, and that can leak brain tissue in. So there are definitely going to be things that happens, but for the most part, a long-term or actual diagnosed autoimmune disease more than likely is going to be from a leaky gut first. So insert gaps video. I will put a link to that video in the description here when we're off and get through that. So leaky gut. Leaky gut is letting stuff in. Now stuff is in. Okay. Damaged cells from that, whatever tissue that damage. So could that be brain tissue? Yes. Are we seeing an autoimmune response as part of the complication of Alzheimer's disease? Yes. They're starting to show that at a microbial level, or a microscope level, but electron microscope level, that there is a autoimmune attack on the dendrites in the brain, and that is part of what autoimmune disease is. That one in particular is probably, the likely culprits are probably aluminum, or actually increased blood sugar. They now call Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes in many circles, because the blood sugar and insulin levels are so high in the brain that that's incredibly damaging to cells. High blood sugar and high insulin are incredibly inflammatory and damaging. And so that's probably a huge part of what's going on with a lot of Alzheimer's, is a bad blood sugar regulation. So we have damage somewhere. The injured tissue gets leaked into the bloodstream, and then we jump back to where we sidebarred. Now the immune system is attacking that particular protein that happens to be your brain tissue or your thyroid tissue. When that happens, that is going to trigger a continued immune response. Sometimes it pops up into what we call clinical, where we have a diagnosis or it's clearly affecting your life in a very specific and significant way. The other way would be for it to be a subclinical autoimmune response, which is the body is just like, hey, that thyroid, it keeps dumping cells, it's a threat, and it starts attacking that thyroid a little bit all the time. This complicates matters because not only is your thyroid trying to recover from the original injury, it also now has to recover from the damage that the immune system is doing, because the immune system has tagged it as an enemy. So this becomes quite a problem. I want to jump back to the brain movie really quick. So in the brain video that I'm going to link down, there's I'm sorry, I can't remember who it is. He was discussing how athletes who have professional athletes who have multiple brain concussions, when they've done some autopsies on their brains, they have discovered that there is a autoimmune response on the brain. So again, when tissue becomes damaged and it can't fully heal, the tissue leaks into the bloodstream. That protein identified by the immune system that keeps coming is identified as a threat, and now we start attacking the home tissue. So that is the basics of autoimmune disease. And it's pretty cool because some people wrote about this perspective in 1940s, 50s. And right now, with the different technology and science of today, they're actually confirming this idea. And some of them had not read these old texts, so often discovering, right, for the first time, they didn't know or hear about it or learn about it. They're discovering the exact same thing that people in the 40s and the 50s postulated was true. So that is pretty cool as well. Some books, some people who did talk about it. So there is this book called, I don't know if it's backwards to you or not, but it's called An Introduction to Proto-Morphology. So protomorphology is the name for the cell determinant, or the PMG, we call it for short. So here we are, PMGs. Protomorphology, PMGs. They're the cell determinant. They determine what the cell is, and also how it grows, which we're going to talk about more in a second. So this is a fun little, it's super short. I don't know if you can find it. I think you can find it on Saline River Press, which I will spell here. I'm going to spell the whole thing because I'm actually not sure of the website. River Press, and Dr. Royal Lee, and protomorphology. It's a fun word to learn how to spell. Okay, protomorphology. So I'm pretty sure that this or some version of this is available for free online, or you can stop by my office and borrow it or read through it. Even though it's short, it's pretty, he's pretty smart. So this is a great one. And he talks about the different functions of protomorphogens, or cell determinants is what you'll find more if you search in today's modern vernacular, which is a very apt name, cell determinants. There is also, I just wanted to bring this, a really fun book called Vitamin News, which are newsletters about Dr. Royal Lee. So he's the main one who discovered and wrote about and discussed this idea of cell determinants. And he actually found a way to support and help it. So we're going to get to that here in a little bit. Other things that protomorphogens do. So protomorphogen is the identifier. I consider it the name tag of the cell. So your liver cell, your skin cell, your eye cell, your thyroid cell, many, many components of those cells are the same, right? What makes them different? The thing that makes them different, in essence, is what's in the nucleus, right? The function of the cell will be determined by what the nucleus and the RNA and DNA, that all tells the cell what to become, how to form the phospholipid membrane, which types of receptors. All of that is going to be determined by something. So it's determined by a cell determinant, which is great. Cell determinants are also protomorphogens. It's the same language. When you have a cell determinant, it's so cool because it not only says, I'm a skin cell, I'm a liver cell, but it also is going to tell the cell how to grow. Did you ever wonder why your liver doesn't just grow in your entire abdominal cavity? The protomorphogens, the cell determinants, tell it what the shape and size of the liver should be. And they have done this by taking protomorphogens and all of the nutrition needed to grow a certain organ in a glass. And the cell determinants will themselves create, you can grow the organ in a water glass beaker. You will grow a liver that looks like a liver. You can grow a kidney that looks like a kidney. It is so cool. So these cell determinants are what controls the cells of the particular organ to work together in an organ cohesiveness to be the organ function they're supposed to be. Isn't that so cool? Also the implications of that, not only in things overgrowing. So if your liver is too swollen, what's happening? Something is either messing with, has damaged, or is overpowering the cell determinants. What about when we have tumors? A tumor is cells growing in an incorrect way outside of the mold of what a liver should be, for example. This is a problem with protomorphogens. There is some kind of issue happening, and there are multiple imbalances that can happen, but it is part of what's happening. Even abnormal growths like a cyst growth or an excess cartilage growth or even potentially an excess bone growth, those could definitely be part of they're definitely directed by protomorphogens. Now, there may be things like developing calluses on your fingers. Is that a bad thing? No, it's done for protection. So protomorphogens are involved in telling your body and the cells of that organ system to grow in a certain way. And that can get broken. So when we have protomorphogens that are not broken, we have a really healthy body, which is cool. And then if we have them that do get broken, we're going to have issues, not just autoimmune issues, but we could have growths, we could have too small, we could have deficient, and things like that. Fun fact, parotid gland, which is underneath our throat, is developed in the same time in utero as the testicles on a developing baby in the womb. That connection, if a baby is having testicles that are not descending, a baby boy, and we're having issues with that, many times we can give support to the parotid gland because it's the same kind of tissue, and actually that the testicles do their proper job. They descend often after that. Okay, I'm getting into the little bit of what do we do about it. So let's go ahead and go there. What do we do about autoimmune issues? And what do we do about PMGs? So, number one, we have to stop why the cells are getting damaged in the first place. That could be injury. So that's why it's better for athletes to take breaks when they're starting to get head injuries. Because if you have an injury on an injured brain, you are going to have issues recovering that. So we have to stop the source. You need to take a break from football, or you need to not roller skate for a few months, whatever it is. Or if it's toxins that are damaging it, we have to stop the toxin flow. And that's where all of the leaky gut healing protocols are important, and why GAPS is so essential for so many people, especially in our modern society full of so many toxins, because there's plenty of toxins waiting to come in. And if your lining isn't keeping them out, you are definitely going to get toxins in that potentially could damage various organs. So that is definitely a huge part. So then we have number two, feed. Feed your body and feed your organs. So when you feed your organs, there are specific things that each organ likes to eat. I brought my chart, which is my cheat sheet here, created by Dr. Lowell Keppel, and is also available on Sling River Press, which is really fun. But it has the various organ systems and what their favorite vitamin and mineral. There's a vitamin and mineral that's predominant in every single organ. So lungs, I already mentioned, love C, vitamin C. They also like vitamin A. I'm not sure if there's a specific mineral that lungs love, actually. I know they like minerals, but I'm not sure if there's a specific one or not. So sorry, I have to get back to you on that. Let's do another one, heart. So heart's vitamin is vitamin B. And heart's mineral, there's multiple, but calcium is really important for that. Thyroid. Thyroid's mineral is iodine, right? We've heard that. Thyroid's vitamin is actually a vitamin called vitamin F, which many people have not heard of. But vitamin F is also called linoleic acid. It is a fatty acid that is very important for moving calcium around, actually. But it is what is needed for the thyroid. There's lots of other ones. I don't think there's any more that are too specific for our discussion right now, but it's pretty fun. So we need to remove the source of the injury. Stop making it happen. This hurts, stop doing it, right? So we have to figure out what that is. And if it's leaky gut, you have to heal your leaky gut. If it's a brain injury, you need to take a pause on sports for a little bit. Then we feed. Great. Now, you've been trying to feed your body for a long time. Why hasn't it worked yet? You eat food. Why hasn't your body healed like it's supposed to? You remember when you cut your hand as a kid? It healed up. You didn't have to do anything special. Yes, that's true. However, two things happen. One, our food is less dense than it used to be. Our soil is getting to be depleted. So the food that we eat, even well-grown food, even organic food, is less nutritionally dense. There's less vitamin A in that carrot than there was 100 years ago. So even if you're eating good foods, you're not necessarily going to eat foods that in nutrition in enough amounts to replenish your body. All right. So number one, we have depleted food. Number two, in our toxic world, we're probably breaking down more cells than we used to. They say our grandparents are exposed to a lot more, I can't remember the number, chemicals than we are. So it is a big deal to, we have a lot more cells that are probably breaking down or getting toxic damage all the time. So that's going to be a big deal. Also, are you eating specific foods like organ meats? Most of our dense nutrition food comes from organ meats, and that's not something we really eat very often anymore. Liver, heart, soup, fish soup that you made with eyes and skin and scales, eating the giblets in a chicken, right? We have largely moved away as a society from eating organ meats, which is where the most dense nutrition is. Also, eating the organ that is struggling in you is really helpful. Liver, eating cow liver, is going to have all the nutrition exactly that your liver needs because it's a liver of a mammal. So there is this trade-off that we can give when we eat organ meats. So that's pretty cool. If you have brain, we didn't talk about brain. I don't remember what the vitamin for brain is B. Specifically G, which is a subset of some of the calming B vitamins in the family of Bs. And I can't remember what the mineral is, I'm sorry, of B. I know the vitamins really well, and the minerals are a little more tricky because we mostly kind of need the same ones. You're going to need some calcium, you're going to need some magnesium, you're going to need potassium. So there's going to be a lot of minerals. That one, for me, is harder to separate out. Feeding. We need to feed purposefully. Now, that can be eating the organ meat, like if it's liver, great, or heart. It's pretty easy to get livers, a little bit less easy, but still doable to get hearts often. So you can eat that food and really feed that organ specific. Now, you've been feeding your body the whole time, and maybe not the densest foods, but you've been trying, you're even having organ meats, and it's still not getting better. What do we do then? Because that happens. What is happening now is that subclinical autoimmune attack on the cell is more than the food that you're feeding to try to fix the cell. Even if you've now removed the source and you're feeding it, we still often need a third step, and that is to give a protomorphogen, PMG, right, of another mammal. It's so cool. Dr. Royal Lee found that if you give a PMG of another mammal, like a pig or a cow, then you will have a healed let me start over. If you give a PMG of another mammal, your immune system will notice the similarities of that PMG and attack it instead. Sweet. This is great news because that means that your own tissue is going to be less attacked by the immune system. And the goal of PMGs, so there's a supplement, which we'll talk about, but you can supplement with PMGs. So the goal of it is we want to find the number of PMGs that equal the number of antibodies that your body has. So let's say we have this many that are attacking your thyroid, then we bring in this much cow thyroid or whatever it is, or pig thyroid, and they attack, and they all get used up. And it's net neutral effect. Hooray! Now we have no antibodies to attack the thyroid. Now the thyroid can actually heal. One of the ways this is described is a countermeasure in military terms. So you have a heat-seeking missile going for the plane. The plane releases high heat flares so that the heat-seeking missile goes to the flares, the plane goes away. So it's the exact same thing. We're just temporarily distracting. This is not a healing, it's not in and of itself a healing thing. But what it is a distraction technique that allows healing to happen. And once healing happens, good news. The body cells take care of themselves. They're in their own barrier. They're in their own PMG little city here behind a fascia membrane, which a lot of PMGs, by the way, live in the fascia. That's why it grows only so much. So we have a little fascia membrane for the PMGs. Here we go. It doesn't let the cells go. The body doesn't need to come in because there's no attack anymore. So it actually will be something that you don't have to take forever once you heal that particular tissue that you need to heal. So we distract it, we feed it. Of course, we stop the source first. And after that, the main thing we have to do is one, we have to play in and determine what is how is the immune system distracted or not? What is this level, right? So we have to figure out where that is, and then every once in a while we'll trial off of the PMG and see, are there still antibodies to attack the thyroid, or have we completely dissolved this problem, which would be great. In the meantime, we also want to make sure we're supporting the proper functioning of the immune system. Because if that immune system, which is responding to maybe dozens of foreign proteins from food and pollen and pet dander and your own autoimmune or your own tissue, right? Your thyroid and your gut and your liver a little bit because it's so overwhelmed with detoxifying, right? So if it has 12 or 14 different proteins that it is responding to, it is going to be overwhelmed and it's not going to function well. And it's going to start being over-responsive. You guys have been in this state where you are overwhelmed with the world and everything is hard and the answer is no and I don't want to go out and why can't I just cry right now, right? And so the immune system will get in that place because it is overwhelmed. It will call on the humoral arm faster, so it'll start making memory of, oh no, here's another thing, I need your help again. And maybe, instead of taking 3 months to develop an autoimmune or an allergy to something, you may have developed it in the second time you were exposed to it, right? So it's going to have the humoral arm come in because the inflammatory arm of just general something's wrong and I can fix it is going to get overwhelmed. So we have these two different things. In review, because I keep throwing in tons of information, I haven't taught this before and it's a difficult one to structure because there's so much you just have to know and then we can talk through them all. So what do we do about autoimmune disease in your body, in our world, in the many, many people who have it? Number one, we have to stop the injury reason, whether that's toxins from leaky gut, whether that is eating a food that you shouldn't be eating, whether that's fluoride and chlorine in the water, which are incredibly damaging to the thyroid, whether that's a head injury from repeated, skiing or whatever sport. I don't want to pick on a particular sport, but what is that? We have to stop it. Number two, we have to feed the organ or organs that we suspect are injured because they need the cell parts to repair. Otherwise, we're just going to have broken cells still. So we have to be eating organ meats and dense foods. This is where whole food nutritional supplementation can come in, but it has to be from a real food. Number three, we distract the immune system with a protomorphogen from another mammal. This allows our own immune system to our immune system to be temporarily distracted so our own tissue can heal and become whole because we're feeding it. And then number four, overall, we need to do what we can to support the immune system to be healthy and balanced. And this means avoiding things that are causing a problem right now. Arguably, could you work on your gluten allergy and your leaky gut while still eating gluten? Potentially. Would it be a lot easier to your body if you avoided gluten because you react to it and calm that inflammation down? Yes, of course. Of course that would, right? So not being around cats if you're allergic to cats, not eating certain foods if those are foods that your body currently is reacting to, so we can heal faster. So then you can go back to being free to those things, which is great. I want to say a note about food. I said whole food nutritional supplementation right there, and I want to clarify what that is. For me, supplementation is convenient, concentrated food sources. So this includes everything from salt, actually. It's a really convenient, concentrated source of minerals. Desiccated liver. So this is raw, dehydrated liver that they put into a powder in capsules, so you don't have to eat liver, but you can still get liver. Cod liver oil, fermented cod liver oil, etc. That is a concentrated food source in a convenient packaging. So you don't have to ferment your own livers of the codfish that you caught on your last biking trip, right? So those are going to be all things that are concentrated food. Juicing is actually a supplement in some ways because you are removing the fiber and putting all of the nutrition that is possible to easily, juicing doesn't 100% remove the nutrition, right? But it does remove a large place that would normally be bound up against the fibers that your digestive system may or may not be able to break apart. So juicing is great. It gives you a concentrated food source. Iodine supplementation on your skin, all these different things. There are certain companies also that will take food and make them into dehydrated vegetable powders or dehydrated organ meat powders, for example. And there is a real food company that many of you may be familiar with that does give you that, and that's what I work with a lot. I don't know all the rules of YouTube, but not sponsored. Hashtag not sponsored. I think I'm supposed to say that. Standard Process is one that does that. And here is my criteria, because I use multiple things, but it has to meet this criteria. You know, a watch, a complicated watch, right? A nice gear watch. That watch is not just the parts of it, it is also the way it's put together, right? That is what we know as a watch. If you have a watch that works, and then I give it to you and you smash it with a hammer, it's not a watch anymore. It used to be a watch, but it doesn't function until it's reassembled, right? So that is not a watch. Also, I could give you all the parts of a watch in a box, but they're not assembled together. That also is not a watch. So for me, the picture that really stuck when I heard this metaphor about the watches, the only nutrition that I consider nutrition is stuff that the body recognizes. I've heard that before, but what really solidified it was it's stuff that is a watch. It's still a watch. You can synthetically make many, many molecules that look similar or are similar to the molecules found in food. But if you put those in a box and give them to me, assembly is required, right? It's not a watch. You can also take food, and a lot more companies, kind of the better end companies, will take food, but then they'll make, I don't want to pick on proprietary blends, but I always get nervous about that word. And they will do something to it to adjust or make it be in a different way. When you take a proprietary blend, or sorry, I'll leave that out. When you adjust the watch or break pieces off, it's probably not going to work either, unless the body comes together and puts a piece back on, right? So nutrition for me is a food that still has the molecules assembled in the same form that they were supposed to be assembled and were assembled in nature. That counts as a real food supplement to me. So if it's high heated, even collagen can be too high heated and it breaks apart the bonds, it destroys the vitamin C, all those different things. So even things that in some brands are totally fine, and collagen came from beef gelatin with this company, as with this company, but depending on the processing and drying and dehydrating of that, it may be a watch still or it may not be a watch still. So as I ask my questions to companies when I meet them at different booths, vendor booths and things like that, I'm asking questions about, do you still have a watch? Did you keep the watch in its original form, or did you try to make a watch? Did you break a watch? What did you do? So that's what I really encourage people to look at of their food. Is this something that your body could eat in nature and it looks and responds and acts exactly the same way? So, okay. That's what we feed our bodies. We feed them nature. Now, sometimes you are so behind in the need for particular nutrients because of whatever reason. Your gut's not absorbing food properly. You have multiple autoimmune diseases. You were eating a standard American diet, which was 50% chips and pizza. And so you really weren't eating nutrition for a lot of years, and now you want to start. At those times, sometimes we like to supplement with specific nutritional, dense, actual nutritional supplements. So that is where feeding can be different depending on the person. Other things I want to talk about are the proper immune support foods. We talk about this a lot in GAPS, but the immune system is a very hungry organ. And the primary way that the immune system works is by cholesterol, actually. So the reason, this is a whole nother video, which I have one on this channel. You can go find it. It's very short, just a quick 7-minute or something. What is the role of cholesterol in the body? Why do we have so much cholesterol now? And this really ties in because most people with autoimmune disease or general illness disease or something that we watch out for a lot is cholesterol is high. Cholesterol is really high. So if cholesterol is really high, then what is going on? The body is using cholesterol as a de-inflammatory or pro-inflammatory. It comes to heal and repair the cells that are damaged. So if you have a lot of cholesterol in your body, in your labs, if they say high cholesterol, you are damaging cells at a very rapid rate. And it's very important, if that's happening, for you to figure out your source of inflammation and stop it. Because cholesterol is linked with issues. High cholesterol is linked with issues, heart disease, poor outcomes in general. Not because the cholesterol is the problem, but because you are doing something and not stopping something that the body feels the need to make a lot of cholesterol for. So cholesterol is a pro-inflammatory marker in my book, in my practice. That's how I view it, pro-inflammatory marker. So with that, if I'm looking at cholesterol and it's high, I need to know why the cholesterol is high. What part of the body is getting damaged? What organ is getting damaged? Is the liver? Is the thyroid? Is the brain? What is it? Okay. Now, we are told, especially if we have high cholesterol, to avoid cholesterol. What does that do when we avoid cholesterol? Number one, the body makes cholesterol out of carbohydrates. So now you have to take a statin to force your body to stop doing something, which bears the question of why would we force the body to stop doing something that's a lot of energy to do? It may be things that's important. Say, sidebar, so we stop eating fat. Now your body has to make it, so you've just put more workload on your body to try to heal the inflammation. That's, by the way, still happening. And then we start seeing the cholesterol deficiency symptoms, which is not something you hear about a lot. But cholesterol deficiency symptoms are brain fog, memory issues, slow, any kind of nerve issues. So myelin sheath that helps our nerves conduct quickly, that is a cholesterol lining. Much of our brain, in some parts of our brain, 60% of dry weight in our brain is saturated fat. So we have a ton of fat in our brain and our nervous system. Our immune system needs a ton of fat as well to do inflammatory responses, to help clean up and repair what's going on, and to just the cells that actually respond have cholesterol, because the immune cells turn over so quickly. You make new ones all the time because they used up a lot. We need a lot of fat for the cell lining of those immune cells. So there's lots of reasons why immune system is a very hungry organ, is what we often say in GAPS. The other thing is fat helps with hormone balance. So all of our sex hormones, many of our hormones that are created, especially the ones that are calming and solid and energizing, those are made from cholesterol. So if we limit our cholesterol, we're going to have a decreased ability to make those hormones, so we can get hormonal imbalances. Seems like maybe a problem, right? And the immune system is going to have to steal a lot of cholesterol because it's the more present threat. It is more important for you, no matter how much you want to have kids, it is more important for you to fight off an invading pathogen than to have hormones that are balanced enough to be ovulating on a regular basis, right? So when we are having a deficiency of cholesterol, the brain is going to prioritize life, safety, security from getting overwhelmed by a pathogenic strain of microbe is going to be first priority. Brain is potentially going to be second. Hormone function, sometimes it depends on the person. We have to make cells. So your sagging skin can be a deficiency of cholesterol or collagen. Anyway, we have lots of issues. So the better thing is just eat a lot of fat. Eat a lot of specifically saturated animal fat is very helpful for replacing and not making your body do so much work. I see a couple people have just jumped on. So pulling that in again, the reason why we need saturated fat is because the immune system is going overboard. So we have to support properly functioning immune system activity. We also want to allow the immune system to have all the resources it needs to repair the inflammation damage. Otherwise, if that inflammation damage doesn't get repaired, we will move into an autoimmune condition, right? So eating saturated fat is hugely helpful to preventing autoimmune conditions because of that. Hopefully that logic makes sense. It seems like you may have to have an actual YouTube not channel, but create a what's called profile. There we go. Which you should be able to do just with your Gmail address if you want to. It's fine if you guys aren't on commenting, but that it should be pretty simple to set up. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Immune system, cholesterol, cholesterol deficiency puts a damper on any potential activity. So we want to make it as easy as possible. So we feed the immune system lots of saturated animal fat, or just animal fat. Interestingly enough, if you look at the saturation of animal fats that we have been taught are like saturated and awful compared to the saturation percentages of plant fats, they are almost the same. And actually some plant fats are more saturated fat. There's more saturated fat in some plant fats than there are in animal fats. Chicken, for example, is pretty unsaturated. Lamb is pretty unsaturated. It's very interesting when we start looking at food. So why do I recommend animal fat? Because we're animals, we're mammals. It's very helpful and easy for our body to just use that substance and not have to convert it in a significant way. Are plant fats great? Yes, they are. Eat them. They're lovely. Avocados, real plant fats, avocados, coconut oil, things like that. What you don't want to eat are canola oil or other high heat oils for various reasons. The main one being it's not a watch anymore. It's been high heated and high pressured. Potentially things added to it. It's not a watch anymore. So it is not something your body recognizes, and that becomes a toxin when it is become rancid and morphed like it is, like canola oil is. All right. I was going to say something else about that. Support proper function, feed well. We talked about that. We talked about what the immune system works with. My thought was to see what wasn't clear and to clarify. It looks like that is going to be a little challenging with needing to create accounts. Sorry, this is our first one, so there's better ways that we will prepare people, but you can come in and listen again. I'm trying to think if there's any questions I anticipated that we could answer without actually having them. Let me talk a little bit about what protomorphogens do in terms of, because there may be a question, well, do protomorphogens increase immune activity? Because you're basically putting the thing that you're basically putting the thing that the immune system is reacting to with an antibody, more of it in the system. So wouldn't that upregulate the system? That is a very smart question. I'm so glad that you asked. What is really cool about taking protomorphogens the way that Dr. Royalty talks about, which is on an empty stomach with, so first thing in the morning and often last thing at night. Let me back up and talk about how standard process does protomorphogens. They will take thyroid or skin or brain or whatever it is. They put it in a vat of salt water, and that salt water explodes the cell, goes into the cell, explodes the cell. The protomorphogens, or the nucleuses of the cell, are heavier, so they fall to the bottom of the vat. They scoop those up and press them into tiny little tablets. They're like this big. Little tablets, easy to do, super salty if you chew them. So that is all they do for the processing in essence. And I'm sure there's a pressing and a whatever, but that's what they do. So we take just the concentrated nucleus of the particular tissue that your immune system is doing. One of the people that Dr. Royalty originally did this experimentation of protomorphogens with, he found this guy, and this is part of why he realized this is true. This guy found that if he ate a pound or a pound and a half, something like that, of lamb heart every day, he didn't have heart symptoms. But if he missed days or missed very many days in a row, his congestive heart failure symptoms appeared and would be present. So this gave Dr. Royalty, who was, I'm sure, already thinking and suspecting on that front, that made him realize. So then he experimented with this man at what the proper dosing of the PMG supplement, and found that he could replace the guy eating a pound and a half of lamb heart every day with the supplement of his concentrated protomorphogen nucleuses. So pretty cool. That's actually how it was confirmed. His theory was confirmed and shown to be practically correct. So that's pretty cool. What is it? Again, we want to find the balance. So the body will absorb the protomorphogen supplement that I just described how it is created into the gut-associated lymph tissue, or the GALT, that surrounds the intestines. This is where 80 to 90, I think it's closer to 80% of the immune system is. It lives there. It has command centers. It communicates with your microbiome, which is most of what it does. That does a ton of jobs, but it does all those things. So When the immune system that's sitting right there notices the protomorphogens that comes in to the lymph tissue right there, it's going to respond right there. The PMGs do not, in any large number, without being broken down, do not get into circulation because they are absorbed into the lymph tissue. So they're not actually in the bloodstream as proteins, which means we do not upregulate our antibodies because there are no extra proteins in our immune system. So that is really cool that gives that balance without. So we find the balance. So all on this side of the bloodstream, the lymph barrier, if you will, here's our PMGs come in and they line up with antibodies. And when they're all evenly matched, you have no symptoms from the autoimmune portion. You may still have damaged tissue that we haven't repaired yet, but the autoimmune portion is healed. When that happens, then we hold steady for a while. I tell people 3 to 12 months. Occasionally it's longer than a year. 3 months is going to be, it's only been a couple months of short-term issue that you've had, like you just had a concussion. I tell people to get on a brain protocol, which includes the food for the brain and the PMG for the nerve tissue. Right, get it on right away. Let's just prevent anything from happening, help the brain have the information that it needs, the space that it needs to heal fully. Great. What if you have had Hashimoto's thyroid since you were 20 and you're now 70? That's going to take longer, right? That makes sense. It's going to take longer for the immune system to get off the back, maybe, but it also is going to take longer to heal that tissue because it's been damaged for a really long time. Kids can tend to be on PMGs less because they just are younger. They've not had the problem so much. And then the other thing is dependent on the tissue and how fast it replicates. So lung tissue, skin tissue, very fast replicating cells. Great. We feed them enough and they're like, sweet, we'll pump out babies all the time. Nerve tissue doesn't replicate very quickly. That's going to take a lot longer before you're going to have fully healthy nerve and brain tissue. Because some things take years and years before you replace. Oh, I should say that. Do you know that you get a new liver like every 3 months? We know that we get new skin layers, right? But all the cells in your body replicate at a certain pace. Some are faster than others, depending on the potential damage. We always can replace unhealthy cells with new cells if we have the food for it and the body has the energy to do that. But there is a normal cycle of regeneration. The cells that line our intestines, they should be replaced in a healthy person every 3 to 5 days. You have an entire new lining of cells in your intestine. So it's pretty cool when we start using PMGs for the skin, which would be intestine too, right? That will often help take away like inflammation, diarrhea, loose stools, or things like that. It will help take them away fairly quickly because if we're feeding some meat stock, which has all the broken down nutrients we need, some animal fat, and then we get the PMG on board, that will help symptoms be steady. Now we have time to heal that's needed, but we are now in a place where we're seeing progress. So that is a discussion. So we do not upregulate PMGs. Sorry, we do not upregulate autoantibodies when we are taking a PMG supplement. You also want to take PMGs on an empty stomach because on a full stomach, it's protein. Your body's just going to break it down and use it as food. It's going to break it into amino acids. So to get the immune effect we want, we need it to kind of slip into the lymph tissue as opposed to getting broken down and eaten as an amino acid and different protein parts. So, all right, hopefully that all makes sense. I highly encourage you to take a look at protomorphogens because it's fun and it's relevant. It is so relevant to us. And I feel that most people that I meet with, whether they are very ill and have known autoimmune diagnoses, or people who only have some allergies, or just they're fatigued, or they just can't figure out what's going on. Most people, I feel that on that spectrum, have some type of autoimmune issue. There is a subclinical action happening quite often. And I don't always put people on PMGs, but if there's an issue that we have tried feeding and we've been feeding well for 2 months, or symptoms are just too bad, or they've been eating well before they come to me, we will often do the PMG, and that just gives them the ability to heal that much quicker because they don't have to battle the immune system's, again, proper response, but they don't have to battle the immune system's response against their tissue that's already damaged. So that is my thoughts and my talk. I was planning to leave some time for questions. So if you happen to have any and have an account, or I'm sorry, I will figure out what is happening and if there's a way to make live chats easier. But otherwise, here's a great video. I am planning to save this so you can share it. Please do share it with people. I highly recommend looking into more things, right? Most Americans have a leaky gut. Even if it's not super leaky or you're not in a really bad place yet, most Americans have a leaky gut. So love Gut and Psychology Syndrome. This book is like a textbook. I also wrote a book called Notes from a GAPS Practitioner. I'll put that here. You do not have to be on the GAPS diet. Practitioner, that's really hard one to sell. That one you can find on Amazon. It's also on Kindle. That's really helpful to be giving. What I wrote that is kind of a practical approach. What are the major categories of juicing and detoxing and eating fats and eating proteins and eating ferments? And why do they help our body so that you can form a plan around what you want to do and what's helpful to you. So that is my book, Notes from a GAPS Practitioner. There's a subtitle that's longer, but you can find it on Amazon with that. Or we have some in the office as well. So that is really the way to get started, because we can start feeding our bodies, start getting our immune system, our intestinal gut system absorbing food, so our immune system and our thyroid and our brain and any other struggling organ can get well. And then PMGs can be an addition. And what I love about PMGs is also that they are GAPS legal, really. Some people may react to the calcium stearate that they have to line the tubes to, but in essence, it's an organ meat. The nucleus is of an organ meat. So I have very few people who react in any way that's not stronger than that. Ooh, I thought of one more thing. Histamine response. And this may lead us into a larger histamine thought, but histamine response. So when the immune system sees a PMG that you took as a supplement in the lymph tissue and attacks it, there's going to be a histamine response. For some of us, that histamine response is not noticeable, or you may notice the first couple of days you do PMGs, you get a little headache for the day or for a couple hours. Some people, they have so many excited antibodies that they're even taking one pill of PMG could be overwhelming to their bodies. And the histamine could just be a lot. And so then they get a really bad headache or a migraine, or they get diarrhea. I found usually 1 or 2 a day is not a big deal. You don't get a histamine response, and I have people work themselves up gradually so that we just avoid that response altogether. The immune system kind of, it balances out. That's not always true, so just know if you're doing a PMG with another practitioner, histamine response can happen. It's good. It means that we have an antibody that's attacking the PMG. Otherwise, it's a protein. It doesn't care. Why would it care about that identifier unless it's already identified it as a problem? So a histamine response, while not necessary, when it is present, it's good. We know for sure that this is something that's very helpful to distract our immune system away from a tissue that's being affected. So it can be a trial by proof. That's not the word for it. There's a medical word. But you try something, and if it works, then you know you were right. So much better to play with organ meat supplements than synthetically manufactured chemicals, right? So this would be a great way to do that. Hey, this had an effect, which means my body is slightly attacking the thyroid or the lungs or whatever you were taking the PMG for. Then you want to go slow as possible. So take a day off, maybe go really slow, and then figure out how to be in a place where you can tolerate it, and then gradually work that up so that you find that place of antibodies equal PMGs, supplements, and now you are free and clear to do the healing as fast as is possible. So that is that. Okay, protomorphogens. Mostly I get questions about histamine and upregulation, which are brilliant, smart questions that people have brought, because I have brilliant people. I know brilliant people. You all are brilliant people. That is about a little bit about GAPS and leaky gut. find the book. That's all I got to say. So it's been lovely being with you. Please do share this. There is a donate link. We do our education for free. We've been doing that for many, many months now. I love it. I absolutely love just giving stuff away. But if you feel like you want to support our education, you can go to the link below. It goes to our website where there's a square checkout to donate whatever amount that you want for our continued education. So thank you all for being on. It's been lovely, and have a wonderful night.